Hello everyone to my Stories While Driving channel. Please subscribe to upload more videos for you. Let us go. In the small town of Monte Vista, Colorado, nestled at the foothills of the San Juan Mountains, known for its fertile lands and peaceful living, a horrifying discovery was made just before sunrise. In the early hours, authorities found themselves facing a terror that had just been unveiled in the year 2012. As dawn broke over the hills, the first responders arrived at a scene that seemed to be straight out of a crime drama. A truck was found clean, with no signs of struggle, but the house bore horrific red writings on the walls, visible to all. The coffee was still hot, indicating that the events had unfolded quickly. Officer Billy Garcia of the Monte Vista Patrol was among the first on the scene. He found a body lying on the ground and immediately drew his weapon, sweeping the property to ensure safety. As backup arrived, the sunlight began to reveal what appeared to be a crime scene of a brutal nature. Next door, Officer Fermin Moreno was directed to the house where Sarah Beasley's 3 children, including her eldest son James, were waiting. They had bravely crossed the street to inform the neighbors and call for emergency services after witnessing a masked intruder attack their home and fatally shoot their mother. The investigation was taken over by Sergeant Tommy Ortega, who soon realized that the double crime had begun with a sudden morning attack on Sarah Beasley's friend, John Salazar. It seemed he had been trying to return to the house when he was shot directly in the chest and from behind. The final shot, which entered his right ear and passed through his brain, was the one that ended his life. Inside the house, the level of violence escalated. Bullet casings were found on the door, in the kitchen, and beside the heater. Sarah Beasley had been shot 3 times, face down in her children's bedroom. It was clear she had been shot in the back as she tried to close the door. This scene was unusual for Monte Vista, a place unaccustomed to such crimes. The investigators faced the disturbing question of what could have led to such a violent act in their peaceful town. As the family and community struggled to comprehend the massacre, John and Sarah's relatives arrived at the crime scene, which was completely cordoned off. Sonia, seeing the writings on the walls of the house, desperately wanted to see her daughter but was not allowed. Overwhelmed by grief, she could do nothing but cry. Sonia headed towards her father's house, and from a distance, she could see the flashing lights of police cars and ambulances. Approaching a police officer, she pleaded for information about what had happened. Eventually, she was told that her father and Sarah had been killed. Her father had been the brave hero and rock of the family, keeping them together. They did everything together, and she had a close relationship with him, learning everything from fishing to camping to yard work. John Salazar and his girlfriend Sarah Beasley did not seem like likely targets for a drug-related crime. John had worked as a doorman for 30 years and was a beloved figure in the community. If anyone needed help, whether a teacher or a cafe worker, John was the man to fix things. He was well known and dearly loved, not just by family and neighbors, but by the entire valley. Sarah, a single mother, was striving to finish her studies to become a counselor. She was beautiful, fun, intelligent, and had a heart of gold. She was an amazing mother, and her friend wished to be half as wonderful as her. The father of her eldest child had died in a boating accident in 2008, and the father of her youngest child, Edward, was a truck driver living nearby. That relationship was not meant to last, and then she met John Salazar. They exchanged numbers one day, and her father came to her, smiling, saying he had met someone very special and wanted her to meet her. Their home, which was once filled with joy, had now become the stage for a horrific double murder. As investigators continued to search the crime scene, they found something they were sure would become key to solving the crime: Sarah's mobile phone. When they turned it on, they found the last message she received was from an unknown number outside the city, from someone named Leon Berry. The message arrived at 4 a.m., asking if she was awake, and this was the last person she had communicated with, half an hour before John and Sarah were killed. The police of Monte Vista realized they were ill-equipped to handle such a double homicide. They had no dedicated detective unit, just a small police department with 15 members, including the chief. By 9 a.m., the Colorado Bureau of Investigation was called in for support, and soon the FBI would join to catch the killers. Was it a crime of revenge, as the red message suggested, or the random act of a mad killer threatening the area? Now, no one knew, and the historic town of Monte Vista was left in shock. Central South Colorado is named for the stunning views of the surrounding San Juan Peaks. It's an agricultural valley proud of its barley production used for brewing, with a mountainous and rocky character at an elevation of approximately 250 meters. About 5,000 residents care for each other, so when news of danger arrives, it spreads quickly. This farming community is a small town where everyone can know what's happening. But in February 2012, the sense of security that people enjoyed was violated. Two members of this community, John Salazar and his girlfriend Sarah Beasley, were shot in their home in front of their children. The community was angry and afraid, not knowing if the perpetrators would return. People were shocked and afraid to leave their homes, afraid to go to work. In a small town, rumors spread quickly, and there was just a feeling of shock, wondering how this could happen to someone amazing that everyone loved. The Monte Vista Police Department and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation were searching the neighborhood for clues, trying to find out if anyone heard or saw anything that could lead them in the right direction. Despite some reports of gunshots or barking dogs, no one witnessed the crime or a potential killer fleeing the scene. When they heard about the message written on the walls with spray paint, friends and neighbors reacted with disbelief, wondering if this was a mistake. Perhaps someone killed the wrong person. As far as everyone knew, neither had any history with prohibited substances, but at this stage, the police couldn't rule out any evidence. Everything changed when the police tracked down Leon Barsh, the man who had been messaging Sarah just before she was killed. They found him in Salt Lake City, Utah, 1,600 kilometers away, which directly ruled him out as a suspect at the time of the incident. He had a solid alibi, as he was supposed to be at work, and it would have been impossible for him to drive from Utah to Monte Vista to commit the crime and then return. Then, at 2 p.m., an interesting person appeared at the police station before the police even had a chance to visit him first. Edward's father, Sarah's 2-year-old son, a truck driver named Daniel Bessie, was urged by Sonia, Sarah's mother, to come to the police as soon as possible. Sonia told him that Sarah had been shot and killed. He wanted to offer his deepest condolences and assured that they would do everything possible. He asked to see his son and was told he would see him as soon as possible. He wanted Doc to find out what was happening, as there were clearly some questions that needed answers. He might have answers. He described his relationship with Sarah as excellent, despite problems between him and Sarah, and that he was able to take his son whenever he wanted. He explained where he had been the previous night, taking a load to Grand Junction and stopping in Monts to sleep for about 7 hours before continuing his journey. He assured them that if he hadn't slept enough before continuing, they shouldn't think he had anything to do with all this. He was questioned and told that the procedure was to ask questions, which annoyed him, but he was assured that they were trying their best and that it was their duty not to exclude anyone who might be a suspect. Then Sergeant Ortega questioned Bessie about some evidence found at the crime scene. They found a blue lamp, and he was asked if he had any idea where it came from. He confirmed it was his and explained that it was there because Sarah had called him the previous week about a problem with her car and wanted him to fix it. He arrived in town at night and thought he had dropped it when he was gathering his things. Bessie clarified that he received another call from Sarah the next day, telling him that he had dropped his lamp and that he was going to pick it up on Monday. Although Bessie's story seemed honest and full of concern, shortly after the interview ended, Sergeant Ortega drove for a minute to Almoza to visit an old friend and Bessie's manager in truck driving. He greeted Tommy and asked how he was doing. Mike asked what was happening there, and he was told about a double murder that was bad. Ortega requested a chance to check Bessie's truck and the road permits that every driver must keep in the truck. He found a blue cooler with 2 unopened beer cans and a bag of melted ice, which matched Bessie's statement that he had spent the night in the truck. According to the permits, Bessie's story was consistent, as the records showed that he left the truck at 5 p.m. In the serene expanse of Colorado, approximately 297 kilometers away, he spent his night. In the morning, he continued his journey towards the Grand Junction, which is about 96 kilometers away, to deliver his cargo. If the records were indeed accurate, he was not even close to the location of Sarah and John at the time of their murder. In Monte Vista, doors that were never locked are now tightly sealed. The old, dusty rifles have been cleaned, loaded, and kept within reach, especially after the beloved secondary school doorman was killed in his front yard, and where a young mother could be murdered before her children's eyes. How could anyone live here and feel safe? It's Valentine's Day, but in the beautiful shops and schools of Monte Vista, Colorado, people are preoccupied with only one thing: the murder. Just yesterday, John Salazar and his girlfriend, Sarah Beasley, were killed in the home they shared with her 3 children, a horrific crime that has the entire town trembling in fear. The men look at life pragmatically, as a problem to be solved, but there was nothing we could do about this situation. There was a void, and this word best describes the place. Everything was always on the phone, trying to find out what happened, why we hadn't heard anything. We were trying to make funeral arrangements. I needed to know when I would get my daughter back. We still don't know. It's a nightmare. I haven't been able to sleep. You leave your house for work, wondering if someone will kill you. I bring my daughter with me to work because I don't want to leave her at home, but I don't know what's happening. While the police and federal agents come to this town, all hope is that they will restore safety. All these agencies have come together to work here because we didn't have the resources or manpower to do everything this case needs. But these strangers didn't have to look any further than Sarah's 3 children for a motive for the crime. Her last thoughts were of her children. She ran to their room to protect them, and this certainly affects all the investigators. A message left at the crime scene forced the investigators to divide their efforts. Some employed reasoning related to drug trafficking, while others looked for motives related to personal matters. 2 months have passed since the murder of John Salazar and Sarah Beasley. The majestic storks that visit the area every year and the renewed sense of spring they bring have come and gone. As the last of the birds continue their seasonal migration, the police have not come any closer to finding the killer since the day of the crime. Sarah's father, Sonia, cannot give up hope. Sometimes he feels like a dog with only a bone, constantly calling. "Sonia, we will call you when we have new information," they say, and after about 2 days, he calls back to ask if there are any updates. In April, the results of John and Sarah's analyses provided a small comfort to the families who wished to preserve a pure memory of their loved ones. Neither had anything stronger than caffeine in their system at the time of the crime. The police are now certain that everything friends and relatives said about them was true. This is not John's nature. He has no connection to drugs or gang life and never interacts with strangers. If John or Sarah had no connection to drugs, then why was that writing on the wall? The police are entirely sure of the answer. The writing on the wall, "Drugs are not free," was used as a technique to inspire us to look in another direction. The design helped investigators narrow their focus. If the crime was not drug-related, it was either random or personal. The investigators delved deeper into John and Sarah's personal lives to find someone who might benefit from their deaths. We discovered that John had 3 different insurance policies, and his son is the beneficiary of all these policies. We called him in for questioning, and he was somewhat annoyed that we asked him about this. "My brother and I would never do anything related to these matters. We were everything to our father, and everyone who knew him knew this." In early May, 3 months after the crime, the investigation team was running out of leads when one of the investigators arrived at Sonia's house, Sarah's mother. They were close, so the investigator hoped she could help uncover any missing evidence related to her daughter's last day. "How are you?" These were just routine visits. They would tell me it was just routine in case they forgot to ask a question or remembered something else they wanted to know from me. "Tell us, do you remember that day?" Among the new questions about the forgotten incident, new evidence emerges. When Sarah left school, she came home and then went with her sister to the store. I have no idea how long she was gone. It was just a few hours, so it was dinner time. This isn't much, but when the officers reported this information to headquarters, Commander Ortega decided to get as many details as possible and went to the store to watch the surveillance video from the afternoon Sarah went shopping. I saw in the video Sarah and her Aunt Rhonda arriving at the store around 1:30 p.m. on the 10th of the month and stayed there for about an hour and a half. There they are leaving. That's her car. Sarah and her aunt were definitely in the parking lot before 3 p.m. This raises questions for Ortega about the forgotten suspect, the father of Sarah's son, Daniel Bessie. At the time Daniel told me he was outside fixing her car, she was in Alamosa, 24 kilometers from Monte Vista. When the police checked Daniel Bessie's phone, they found other contradictions. After reviewing the search we obtained for his phone and hers, it turned out that at 1 p.m., when he told me he was in pain, His phone was actually connected to a coverage tower. Investigators began to wonder if Daniel Bessie's claim of fixing his car was just a pretext to hide the reason his flashlight was found at the crime scene. Based on the contradictions in Bessie's story, the police obtained a warrant to search his home. Upon searching the house, they found a gun case. Inside the house, they discovered a black pistol box with a space for the gun, but the gun itself was missing. The engraved measurements indicated that it was a Ruger pistol, which was exactly what the criminal used to kill John Salazar and Sarah Beasley. This was not the only potential evidence. There were some guardianship papers for the children, so they took all of these with them. The problem was that the investigators had not been able to link Bessie to the crime scene or the gun. Currently, Sarah's youngest son will remain with the only living parent. About a year had passed since the beloved school doorman John Salazar and his girlfriend Sarah Beasley, the mother of 3 children, were killed in a double and violent crime that had not been solved. With the state police and federal authorities working with local authorities on the case, investigator Quan placed Daniel Bessie, the father of Sarah's youngest son, as the prime suspect. However, without sufficient concrete evidence to arrest this suspect, Bessie remained at home during the holiday season, celebrating with the victim's son. There was a lot of circumstantial evidence, but even after everything that had happened, he did not want to believe who did it. Then, on December 9th, a significant and profound flaw in his alibi was revealed when a cell tower associated with his mobile phone showed that he was not in Alamosa as he claimed, but in Jansen, Montrose, 6 hours from the crime scene. However, Jansen is much closer. He told us he slept in the truck, and the phone connection to the tower showed that he was in his hometown, only an hour or an hour and a half away, which means Bessie could have reached Monte Vista in time to commit the crime. The driving distance between the crime scene and where the phone connected to the tower was within the time he could have committed the crime and driven back to Grand Junction the next morning. But just because he could have killed John and Sarah doesn't mean he actually did it. Unless the police could link him with concrete evidence to the crime, they would not be able to convince a jury to find him guilty. To do that, the investigators refocused their attention on the gun case. They knew they were looking for a .22 caliber, and as determined in the criminal report, it seemed that all the spent bullets were fired from that weapon. The spent bullets were from a .22 caliber Ruger pistol, but where was the weapon? The police searched through piles of phone records and messages, trying to find something that might lead them to the Ruger pistol. They were able to confirm that Daniel owned a Ruger semi-automatic pistol that he bought from one of his close friends, who in turn bought it from someone now living in North Dakota. Can I help you? Jim Moore from the federal police. How are you? I'm fine. How can I help you? I'm looking for a gun registered in your name, or maybe it was a .22 caliber Ruger. I had one previously. Do you know what happened to it? I sold it. He said he tried the gun and fired it several times in a rural area where he used to hunt deer. Did you fire it anywhere else? Here, they fired all over this area. These are the places I use the most. In fact, I hunt deer and do not use caliber .22. We have found something here. Let's take a look. I managed to find 9 empty bullets for a caliber .22 pistol. I carefully extracted all the bullets, along with other fragments, and took them directly to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. The casings matched exactly those found at the crime scene, which positively linked the pistol to Daniel and the crime scene. To all units, on January 1st, 2013, and after 11 months of the crime, Daniel Bessie was arrested for killing John Salazar and Sarah Beasley. Raise your hands. He refuses to speak to the police and faces several charges of child abuse due to the trauma he caused to Sarah's children the morning he killed their mother. All I could do was sit down. Police here in the valley told me they had arrested him, and my heart sank. All I could do was sit down. Almost a year after his arrest, with the 3 children under the safe guardianship of Sarah's family, Daniel was fully convicted of the crime and sentenced to 208 years in prison. There was a feeling of relief and a sigh of relief from all of us, and we all said, finally, justice for Sarah and John. Although justice has been done for this cold, brutal crime, the loss of Sarah and John will remain in the hearts of family and friends forever. When Sarah moved to heaven, she took a piece of my heart with her, a piece I will never recover. That piece will never return to me because it is a piece that belonged only to her, and she took it with her. My father was her rock. He was a chain that has been broken, but he will reconnect it someday again.